The smell of iron came first. Not rust, not old pipes, fresh iron like blood drying behind a locked door. And every night at 2:17 a.m., the walls of the building began to sweat.
Welcome to Horror Audiobook.
This isn't a story about a killer who breaks in. This is a story about a killer who never leaves. In a crumbling high-rise scheduled for demolition, tenants begin disappearing floor by floor. No forced entry, no screams, no bodies, only a metallic scent seeping through the ventilation system and security footage proving that no one has entered or exited apartment 9 in over 3 years. Tonight, you will learn the truth about what lives inside that apartment and why the building itself may be feeding it. Chapter 1. The smell is not rust, it's a warning. The building on Calder Street leaned slightly to the left, as if exhausted by the weight of its own history. It had once been beige. Now it was the color of nicotine and neglect. The balconies sagged like tired eyelids. Rust bled down the drain pipes in dark orange streaks, marking the years like a prison tally scratched into concrete. Mara Ionescu stood across the street with a single suitcase at her feet and studied it the way a person studies a wound, curious how bad it really is. Cheap rent, no questions asked, immediate move-in. After the divorce, cheap and quiet were the only things she trusted. The city had grown too loud for her grief, too bright, too full of people who expected explanations. The high-rise on Calder Street promised anonymity, 36 units, half occupied, no doorman, no small talk. It looked like a place where no one would notice if she cried or screamed. She dragged her suitcase through the front entrance. The lobby lights flickered once, as though clearing their throats. The air inside was thick. Not humid, not dusty. Metallic. She paused. There it was again, that faint, sharp scent at the back of her throat. Iron, old coins, the inside of a cut lip. She swallowed. Old pipes, she muttered to herself, that's all. The elevator groaned when she pressed the button for floor 8. It arrived reluctantly, its doors sliding open with a tired sigh. Inside, the mirror was cracked across the center, splitting her reflection into two versions, one upright, the other slightly warped. The metallic smell intensified as the doors closed. By the time she stepped out onto the 8th floor, it had thinned again, dissolving into the stale scent of carpet cleaner and something faintly sour. Her apartment was 8B. Apartment 9 was directly across the narrow hall. The number on its door was brass, polished, strangely clean compared to the peeling paint around it. She noticed that immediately. Everything else in the hallway was aging, paint bubbling, wallpaper splitting along the seams, light fixtures buzzing faintly. But the number 9 gleamed, and the smell lingered there. Stronger. She adjusted her grip on the suitcase and forced herself not to stare. It was an empty unit. The landlord had mentioned it in passing. Vacant, he'd said, too casually. Vacant didn't mean empty, she thought, though she couldn't say why that idea felt so certain. Her key turned stiffly in the lock of 8B. Inside, the apartment was small but clean. The windows overlooked the alley. The radiator ticked faintly as if whispering to itself. The silence was immediate and thick. It felt sealed. Mara stepped back into the hallway to retrieve the rest of her belongings. The smell hit her again. Stronger now, like pennies soaked in warm water. She glanced toward apartment 9. For a moment, just a flicker, she thought she saw something dark pooled at the bottom of the door. A shadow, or liquid. She blinked and it was gone. New tenant. The voice made her flinch. An elderly woman stood halfway down the corridor, wrapped in a lavender cardigan despite the heat. Her hair was thin and pulled into a bun so tight it seemed to stretch her face upward. Her eyes were bright, too bright. Yes, Mara replied, steadying herself. 8B. The woman nodded slowly. You'll get used to the noises. Noises. The pipes, she said quickly, too quickly. It's always the pipes. Mara smiled politely. I thought I smelled something metallic. The woman's expression froze for half a second before reshaping into reassurance. It's always the pipes. The repetition felt rehearsed, mechanical. How long has 9 been empty? Mara asked. The woman's gaze flicked to the polished brass number, then back to Mara. 3 years, she said. Pause. Vacant. Another pause. It's always the pipes. And then she retreated into her own apartment without another word. The hallway felt narrower after she left. Mara lingered a moment longer, staring at the door to apartment 9. The brass number caught the light again. Polished, untouched by age. She reached out, almost without thinking, and pressed her fingertips lightly against the wood. It was warm. Not sun-warmed, not radiator-warmed. Body-warmed. She jerked her hand back. The hallway light above her flickered. Just once. That night, Mara unpacked slowly, folded her clothes, placed a framed photograph face down inside a drawer instead of on a shelf. She boiled water for tea and tried not to think about the metallic tang that seemed to drift intermittently through her vents. It was subtle, but it was there. At 2:17 a.m. she woke. Not from a noise. From a smell. Stronger now. Iron wet, fresh. Her heart thudded once hard. The radiator clicked. The walls made a soft, settling sound. Then she heard it. A faint hum. Low, rhythmic. Not mechanical. Almost breathing. She sat up in bed, holding her breath. The hum stopped. Silence flooded back in. After a long minute, she lay down again, convincing herself it was the building adjusting to night air. It's always the pipes. Morning arrived pale and thin. Mara stepped into the hallway to collect her mail. The metallic scent was faint but present, hovering near apartment 9 like an invisible warning tape. Downstairs, the lobby buzzed with unfamiliar tension. 2 police officers stood near the elevator. A small cluster of tenants whispered near the mailboxes. What happened? She asked no one in particular. The lavender cardigan woman from the night before answered. 7C, she said softly. He's gone. Gone. Vanished. The word seemed to stretch in the air. Maybe he moved out, Mara offered. The old woman shook her head slowly. Everything's still there. Furniture, clothes, phone on the kitchen counter, the bed unmade. No sign of struggle. No sign of exit. The officers confirmed it quietly. Security footage showed no one leaving the building overnight. No stairwell activity. No elevator use. No one goes in. No one comes out. And yet 7C was gone. The metallic scent thickened for just a moment, just enough for Mara to taste it again. She turned slowly toward the elevator doors. The polished metal reflected her face back at her, split down the middle by the seam. Behind her reflection, just for an instant, she thought she saw something darker standing in the hallway. But when she spun around, there was only the old woman. Watching. It's always the pipes, she whispered. Upstairs on the 8th floor, the hallway felt tighter. Quieter. Apartment 9's brass number gleamed. And if you leaned close enough, if you pressed your ear against the wood, you might have sworn you could hear something moving inside. Slow. Deliberate. Waiting. Chapter 2. The security cameras never lie, except here. By the second night, the building felt aware of her. Not alive, not yet. But aware. Mara noticed it in the way the elevator hesitated before opening, as though deciding whether to let her in the way the hallway lights hummed louder when she stepped outside, in the way the metallic scent sharpened when she lingered too long near apartment 9. Below her, 7C remained sealed off with thin yellow tape stretched across the doorframe. It looked performative, decorative, like the building was mocking the idea of investigation. Because no one had seen anything. No one goes in, no one comes out. That was what the police officer had said in the lobby that morning. Mara repeated it to herself as she lay awake that night. No one goes in, no one comes out. At 2:17 a.m. she was already awake. Waiting. The smell came first. Stronger than before, thicker. It coated the inside of her nose, metallic and warm like air exhaled over raw meat. Then came the hum. Low, almost electrical. Her heart beat in her throat as she slipped out of bed and stepped into the hallway. The corridor was dim. Only every second light remained on after midnight. The shadows between them felt intentional. Apartment 9 stood across from her, silent and gleaming. The brass number caught the weak light again. Polished, untouched. The hum wasn't coming from inside her apartment. It was coming from the walls. She stepped closer to 9. The metallic smell intensified so suddenly, it made her eyes water. And then, a sound. Soft. Behind the door. A dragging noise. Slow. Measured. Like something heavy being repositioned. She froze. Her mind raced through rational explanations. Old plumbing shifting beams, neighboring tenants moving furniture. Except the unit was vacant. Vacant doesn't mean empty. The thought felt like it didn't belong to her. She stepped back. The hum stopped. The dragging ceased. The hallway returned to silence, so complete it rang in her ears. After a long moment, she retreated into her apartment and locked the door. She didn't sleep again. The next morning, curiosity replaced fear. Curiosity was easier to carry. The lobby was quieter than the day before, but tension still clung to the walls like moisture. The building manager, Mr. Caldera, stood behind the front desk scrolling through something on his phone. He looked irritated rather than concerned. "Morning," Mara said lightly. "About 7C, any updates?" He exhaled sharply. "Police say he must have left earlier in the day. Cameras aren't perfect." "But they said." "I know what they said." His tone sharpened. Mara hesitated, then leaned closer. "Can I see the footage?" He blinked at her. "Why?" "I work remote," she lied smoothly. "Security software, just curious." The lie surprised even her. But Mr. Caldera studied her for a long second, then shrugged. "Fine, 5 minutes." The security office was a narrow room behind the lobby. 3 monitors displayed grainy black and white feeds. Elevator interior, front entrance, lobby. The footage from 2:00 a.m. onward had already been queued up. Mara leaned forward. 2:12 a.m. empty lobby. 2:15 a.m. elevator doors closed. 2:16 a.m. nothing. At 2:17 a.m. the screen flickered. Just once. A distortion. Like static pulling the image sideways for a fraction of a second. Mr. Caldera sighed. Old wiring. But Mara rewound it. Frame by frame. The distortion wasn't random. In that split-second blur, the elevator doors appeared open. Just slightly. Wide enough for something narrow to slip through. Her breath caught. "That's just compression artifact," Caldera said quickly. She ignored him. They switched to the hallway camera on floor 7. 2:16 a.m. empty corridor. 2:17 a.m. flicker. 2:18 a.m. empty corridor. Zoom in, she whispered. Caldera hesitated but complied. At the far end of the hall, outside 7C, something was different. The door. It wasn't fully closed, just slightly ajar. But when the next frame appeared, it was shut again. No one goes in, Caldera muttered defensively. No one comes out. Mara felt her pulse in her wrists. What about floor 8? She asked. He stiffened. Why? Just check. He reluctantly pulled up the hallway camera outside her apartment. 2:16 a.m. empty. 2:17 a.m. distortion. 2:18 a.m. empty. But this time she saw it. In the glitch. A shape. Tall, thin. Standing directly in front of apartment 9. Not fully formed, just a shadow where no shadow should be. She swallowed. Pause it. Caldera froze the distorted frame. The pixels swam, but the outline remained. Long arms. Head tilted slightly to one side. Watching the camera. Watching them. That's just digital noise, Caldera insisted. But his voice trembled. Mara leaned back slowly. No one goes in, she whispered. No one comes out, he finished. Silence settled heavily between them. She glanced at the timestamp. 2:17 a.m. The same time she'd woken. The same time the hum had started. The same time the smell thickened. Her mind connected the pattern before she wanted it to. The cameras didn't fail. They blinked. Like eyes. And something moved in that blink. That night she didn't wait until 2:17. She stood in the hallway at 2:15 a.m., watching the door to apartment 9. The metallic scent was already present, faint but growing. Her phone was in her hand, recording. 2:16 a.m. The hum began, low and internal, vibrating through the walls. Her heart pounded. 2:17 a.m. The hallway light above her flickered. Once, twice, and in that flicker, the brass number on apartment 9 seemed to darken. Not tarnish. Darken. As if something passed behind it. The door handle twitched. Just slightly. Her breath stopped. The handle rotated slowly downward, then snapped back into place. The hum ceased. The light stabilized. The smell receded. She stood frozen, phone still raised, recording nothing but a quiet hallway. After several long seconds, she looked down at the screen. The video glitched at exactly 2:17 a.m. A distortion. A stretch blur. And within it, for a single frame, the hallway was empty. She wasn't there. Her recording showed the corridor without her standing in it, as if she had never stepped outside. Her pulse thundered in her ears. No one goes in. No one comes out. But something moves. And it moves when the building blinks. Across the hall, behind the polished brass number, something shifted again. Slow. Deliberate. As if aware she had finally started looking back. Chapter 3. The walls sweat at 2:17 a.m. By the third night, Mara stopped pretending she was imagining it. The pattern was too clean. The time too precise. 2:17 a.m. Not 2:16, not 2:18. The building did not drift into its strangeness. It arrived on schedule. All day the metallic scent had lingered faintly in the hallway outside apartment 9. Not overpowering, just present, like a memory you can't quite place. Tenants avoided eye contact now. Conversations in the lobby cut short when she approached. The disappearance of 7C had settled into the structure like a crack in glass, small, but impossible to ignore. And yet life continued. Packages were delivered, the elevator groaned, Someone vacuumed at noon. It was almost funny how ordinary horror insists on being. That evening, Mara pressed her palm against the wall between her apartment and 9. Cold, dry, silent. She told herself she was grounding, proving to her body that the structure was inert, concrete, wiring, pipes. It's always the pipes. She almost laughed. At 2:12 a.m. she sat upright in bed, waiting. Her room was dim, lit only by the sodium glow leaking through the blinds. The radiator ticked faintly. At 2:16 a.m. the air changed. Not in temperature, in density. It thickened. Her ears popped slightly, like descending in altitude. Then, the smell, stronger than ever before. Not just metallic now. Wet, fresh. Her stomach tightened. 2:17 a.m. The hum began again, but louder this time, not from the hallway. From inside her walls. A low vibration that seemed to travel vertically, like something moving between floors. She swung her legs off the bed and stepped barefoot onto the hardwood. The vibration pulsed once, twice, then a sound. Soft, dripping. Mara turned slowly toward the wall she had touched earlier. A dark line was forming near the ceiling. Thin at first, then widening. Liquid seeped through the paint in slow, deliberate threads. It ran downward in narrow rivulets. Thick, viscous. Her breath hitched. It wasn't water. Water spreads differently. This moved like syrup. And the smell. Iron. Warm iron. The line reached halfway down the wall before separating into branching trails, like veins spreading beneath skin. She staggered backward. Her heels slipped on something slick. She looked down. The floor near the baseboard was damp. The liquid was pooling there. She crouched slowly and touched it with trembling fingers. It was warm. Not radiator warm. Body warm. Her stomach lurched. "This isn't real," she whispered. The hum intensified for a brief, terrible second, almost pleased, and then cut off abruptly. Silence flooded the room. The dripping stopped. The liquid ceased its descent. Mara stared. The streaks on the wall were fading. Not drying. Receding. Like ink being drawn back into paper. Within seconds, the paint was smooth again. Clean. Dry. Her fingertips were still wet. She lifted them toward the light. Dark. Thick. Red. Her breath quickened. She wiped her hand against a tissue from her bedside table. When she looked down again, the tissue was dry. Her fingers were clean. The floorboards beneath her were spotless. No stain. No moisture. Nothing. Her pulse thundered in her ears. The building had exhaled, and then swallowed its own evidence. The next morning, she inspected the wall in daylight. Unblemished. Perfectly intact. If she didn't know better, she would have convinced herself it had been a stress dream, grief manifesting as hallucination, trauma rewriting sensory input. But the metallic scent still hovered faintly in the hallway. And the time still mattered. Downstairs, she found the lavender cardigan woman waiting near the mailboxes. Watching her. "You look tired," the woman said softly. "I didn't sleep." A pause. The walls, Mara stopped herself. The woman's eyes sharpened. "The walls what?" Mara studied her face carefully, searching for cracks. "They're damp," she said finally. The woman smiled faintly. "It's always the pipes." The phrase slid out smoothly. "Practiced." But it wasn't water. The woman's smile faltered for half a second. then returned. The building settles at night. You'll get used to it. How long have you lived here? The question hung between them. Long enough. The answer wasn't an answer. Mara stepped closer. Has anyone else ever mentioned moisture? The woman's gaze flicked toward the elevator, then toward the stairwell. As if calculating. Finally, she leaned closer. People smell it before they see it. Mara's pulse quickened. See what? But the woman stepped back abruptly. I shouldn't have said that. Said what? Nothing. She turned and walked toward the elevator. Mara followed her with her eyes. The doors slid open. The woman stepped inside. The mirrored interior reflected her thin frame infinitely. As the doors began to close, she met Mara's gaze and whispered, 217. The doors sealed shut. That night, Mara placed her phone against the wall and recorded audio beginning at 2:10 a.m. She didn't trust her senses anymore. She trusted patterns. 2:16 a.m. The air thickened again. 2:17 a.m. The hum began. This time it was unmistakable. Not random vibration. Movement. Something traveling upward. Inside the walls. Past her floor. Toward 9. Her throat tightened. The wall began to darken again, but this time not in streaks. In shapes. Broad patches forming beneath the paint. Pressing outward. As if something inside the wall was leaning against it. The outline was wrong. Too tall. Too narrow. The suggestion of shoulders. And beneath them, hooks. Long, curved shapes protruding faintly against the drywall. Her breath stopped entirely. The paint stretched thin over the impressions. The shape tilted its head. The wall bowed slightly inward. Then, a sharp metallic clang echoed from somewhere above her. The impression vanished. The hum stopped. The air thinned instantly. She collapsed back onto the bed, shaking. Minutes passed. Silence returned. But upstairs, on floor 8, in the hallway, the polished brass number on apartment 9 gleamed brighter than before. And if anyone had been standing there at 2:18 a.m., they might have noticed something new beneath the door. A thin, dark moisture, seeping outward, as if the apartment itself had begun to sweat. Chapter 4. Apartment 9 has no tenant officially. By morning, Mara had stopped telling herself she was overreacting. Sleep deprivation could explain shadows. Grief could explain paranoia. But grief did not explain synchronized timestamps. 2:17 a.m. Every incident, every smell, every vibration. She stood in her kitchen holding a mug of coffee that had long since gone cold and stared at the wall she shared with apartment 9. It looked harmless in daylight. Flat white, cracked faintly near the ceiling. Normal. But she had seen it move. And more importantly, she had heard something travel upward. Not horizontally. Vertically. As if the building had veins. The records room. That afternoon, Mara returned to the lobby with a calm expression and a fabricated excuse. I left my lease addendum downstairs, she told Mr. Caldera. The maintenance clause. He barely looked up. Cabinet in the back office. Don't rearrange anything. The back office smelled of dust and burnt coffee. Filing cabinets lined the wall, labeled by apartment number. The fluorescent light overhead flickered at irregular intervals, humming like a tired insect. She found the drawer labeled 9. It was thinner than the others. She slid it open. Inside, 3 folders. Only 3. The first 2 belonged to tenants from 5 years ago, short stays, 1-year leases, terminated early. The third folder was older. No termination date. No forwarding address. Tenant name, Adrian Vassal. Occupation, butcher. Her stomach tightened. Move-in date, 3 years and 4 months ago. Move-out date, blank. She flipped through the documents. Complaints from neighbors about late-night activity. Reports of industrial odors. Multiple noise citations. And then, police inquiry. Several tenants had gone missing during that year, not from the same floor, not at the same time, but enough to form a pattern. Adrian Vassal had been questioned. Never charged. Insufficient evidence. Apartment search conducted. Result, unit empty. No furniture. No appliances. No blood. No tools. Vacant doesn't mean empty. Her fingers trembled slightly as she continued reading. The electricity usage logs were attached at the back. Apartment 9's power consumption had never dropped to 0. Even after Vassal moved out. Even after the police sealed the case. Every month, small fluctuations. And every night, a spike between 2:16 and 2:18 a.m. She stared at the graph. It was subtle, but consistent. The building blinked, and something inside drew power when it did. The elderly neighbor. When she stepped back into the hallway on the 8th floor, the metallic scent greeted her like a warning. The lavender cardigan woman was already there. Waiting. You shouldn't go digging, the woman said softly. Mara stopped mid-step. I didn't tell you I was. You don't have to. Her voice was gentle, but her eyes were sharp. Who was Adrian Vassal? Mara asked. A flicker of something passed through the woman's expression. Officially, she said. Yes. A tenant. And unofficially. Silence stretched. The hallway lights buzzed faintly overhead. He worked nights, the woman said finally. Always carrying heavy bags, never used the elevator. Why? He said it made him dizzy. Mara glanced toward the elevator doors at the end of the hall. Mirrored. Split down the middle. And then, people began leaving. Leaving. That's what the management called it. The woman leaned closer. But no one saw them go. No one goes in, no one comes out. The phrase echoed in Mara's head like a refrain. Did you ever see inside 9? She asked. The woman's lips tightened. Yes. And it was empty. The word came too quickly. Empty. Vacant. Harmless. But it felt, the woman trailed off. Like what? Like it was waiting. A silence followed that statement. Not awkward. Dense. Mara swallowed. Why didn't you move out? The woman smiled faintly. Where would I go? The answer sounded rehearsed, but not entirely untrue. The electricity spike. That night, Mara stayed awake in her living room with her laptop open. She had copied the electricity data onto a flash drive. At 2:15 a.m., the building was quiet. At 2:16 a.m., her laptop screen flickered. She checked the outlet. Secure. 2:17 a.m. The hum began. Not just in the walls. In the wiring. Her overhead light dimmed briefly, as though power was being siphoned elsewhere. She refreshed the electricity monitoring app connected to her smart meter. There it was. Her unit's usage spiked sharply. But so did Apartment 9's. Her throat tightened. Apartment 9 had no active lease. No registered occupant. And yet, it was drawing current. The hum grew louder, traveling upward. Her ceiling creaked faintly. A distant metallic clang echoed from above. Then, Footsteps, not in the hallway, above her, on a floor that officially did not exist. Slow, measured, heavy, she stared at her ceiling. The footsteps stopped directly above her living room, then shifted toward the hallway, toward apartment 9. Her breathing became shallow. The metallic scent thickened. It wasn't drifting from the vents anymore. It was seeping through the drywall itself. A faint dampness formed near the corner where her wall met the ceiling. Not streaking downward this time. Spreading outward. Circular. Like a stain blooming through fabric. She whispered into the empty room. "You're not vacant." The hum stopped instantly. The footsteps ceased. Silence slammed into place. Her laptop screen returned to normal brightness. On the monitoring app, Apartment 9's electricity usage dropped back to baseline. As if it had never spiked. As if it had never drawn power at all. The truth in plain sight. Mara stepped into the hallway at 2:20 a.m. The metallic scent lingered faintly. Apartment 9's brass number gleamed under the fluorescent light. She approached slowly. This time she noticed something new. The wood around the doorframe bore faint scratches. Vertical. Long. Not recent. But not old enough to ignore. She leaned closer. The air felt warmer here. Thicker. As if circulating. She placed her ear against the door. At first, nothing. Then, a faint electrical buzz. Followed by something else. A sound so soft she almost dismissed it. Breathing. Not mechanical. Not rhythmic like a fan. Slow. Controlled. Deliberate. Her heart hammered. The breath paused, as if listening back. Then resumed. And beneath it, a voice. Low. Muffled. Not coming through the door. Through the walls. One word. Drawn out like a whisper against bone. Vacant. Her body went cold. She stepped backward slowly. The hallway light flickered once. The brass number 9 darkened briefly. Then shone again. Behind the door, something shifted its weight. And this time, it moved closer. Chapter 5. Chapter 5. The elevator refuses the 9th floor. By the 5th night, Mara understood something simple and terrible. The building did not hide its secrets. It misdirected them. It told you where to look, just not how to see. The missing button. The elevator panel gleamed under flickering fluorescent light. There was no 9. Not even a scar where a button might have been removed. Just a smooth strip of brushed metal between 8 and 10. She ran her finger slowly over the gap. Flat. Unbroken. As if 9 had never existed. And yet she lived on the 8th floor. And apartment 9 sat directly across from her door. The numbering made no architectural sense. She pressed 8. The elevator groaned upward. Her reflection in the cracked mirror split her face in two again. The seam ran vertically down her features, distorting one eye just slightly. For a moment, just a flicker, she thought the distorted side smiled. The doors opened. 8th floor. But something felt off. The hallway seemed longer than usual. The fluorescent light above apartment 9 buzzed louder. She stepped out. The elevator doors closed behind her with a heavier sound than normal. Like a lid. Counting the landings. That afternoon, she avoided the elevator. Instead, she took the stairwell. Concrete steps spiraled upward in tight, echoing turns. Each landing bore a stenciled number in chipped black paint. 1, 2, 3. She climbed slowly, listening. Her footsteps echoed strangely, as if a second set followed half a second behind. By the time she reached 8, her pulse had quickened. She looked up. The next landing above should have been 9. Instead, the wall read 10. She frowned. That wasn't possible. She counted the steps from 8 to the next landing. 12 steps. She counted again. 12. There should have been a 9th floor marking between them. She ran her hand along the concrete wall. Rough, cold, but midway between the painted 8 and the painted 10, she felt something beneath the surface. A slight indentation, like a number once existed there and had been sanded down. She leaned closer. Under the peeling paint, faint outlines formed. The curve of a 9. Erased, not architecturally omitted. Removed. Her throat tightened. Why remove the number, she whispered, if the floor doesn't exist? The stairwell seemed to absorb the question. And then, a faint metallic clang echoed from above. She froze. It was the same sound she'd heard at 2:17 a.m. Distant. Industrial. Like a hook striking tile. The sound came from between floors. Not from 8. Not from 10. From the space that should not have been there. She looked upward. The concrete between landings was solid. But something felt hollow, as if the building's bones were layered over a cavity. Her pulse pounded in her ears. She pressed her palm flat against the wall between 8 and 10. It was warmer than the rest of the stairwell. And faintly, it vibrated. Slow, deliberate, as if something inside was shifting its weight. She jerked her hand back. The vibration stopped. The handprints. Back on the 8th floor, she examined the hallway wall outside apartment 9 more carefully. The wallpaper was peeling in thin strips near the ceiling. She tugged at one loose edge. It tore easily. Behind it, the drywall bulged faintly outward. Not dramatically, just enough to distort the flat surface. She stepped closer and saw them. Handprints. Faint, pressed from inside the wall. Long fingers. Too long. The impressions weren't random. They stretched vertically, upward, like something climbing inside the structure. She swallowed hard. They're not trying to get out, she murmured. They're moving through. A slow understanding formed. If the butcher had lived in apartment 9. If tenants had vanished without exiting. If electricity spiked nightly. Then apartment 9 was not a room. It was a passage. The elevator didn't skip the 9th floor. It refused it. The building had sealed it off. Or hidden it. But something still traveled there. At 2:17 a.m. Every night. The test. That evening, she performed a simple experiment. At 2:14 a.m., she stood inside the elevator alone. She pressed 8. Then 10. Both buttons lit up. The elevator began to rise. At 2:16 a.m. it slowed. Unnaturally. The hum began, louder inside the elevator shaft. The lights flickered once. Her breath caught. 2:17 a.m. The elevator jerked. Not violently. Just a subtle halt. Between floors. Her stomach dropped. The floor indicator panel blinked erratically. 8. 9. 10. 11. Then, blank. The elevator was suspended in the space between. The hum grew deeper. More resonant. As if surrounding the car from all sides. The metallic scent flooded the small enclosure instantly. Her throat burned. She pressed the emergency button. No response. The lights dimmed further. And then, a new sound. Close. On the other side of the elevator wall. A slow dragging scrape. Moving upward. Parallel to her. Her breath became shallow. The scrape stopped. Directly beside her head. Something tapped lightly on the metal. Once. Twice. 3 times. She squeezed her eyes shut. "It's always the pipes," she whispered desperately. The tapping stopped. The hum deepened. And then, the elevator began moving again. Smoothly. As if nothing had happened. The indicator lit up. 8. The doors slid open. She stumbled out into the hallway, heart hammering. Behind her, the elevator doors remained open a fraction too long. As if waiting for something else to exit. Then they closed. The realization. Across the hall, apartment 9's brass number gleamed under flickering light. But now she saw it clearly. The number wasn't polished. It was worn. Not by time. By touch. Frequent touch. At the center of the 9, the metal had dulled slightly. As if fingers pressed there often. She stepped closer. The air was warmer here. Circulating. Alive. At 2:18 a.m., a faint sound emerged from behind the door. Not dragging. Not humming. Breathing. Slow. Measured. Satisfied. And somewhere above her, between 8 and 10, concrete shifted faintly, as though a hidden floor had just been occupied again, waiting for tomorrow night. At 2:17. Chapter 6. The ventilation carries more than air. By the 6th night, the smell no longer drifted. It traveled. Mara noticed it first in the kitchen vent above her stove. A faint metallic tang slipped through the slats, subtle but unmistakable, not constant pulsing, like a heartbeat carried on recycled air. She stood on a chair and pressed her nose close to the vent. Warm. The air flowing through, it was warmer than the apartment. And beneath the iron scent was something else now. Sweet. Sickly sweet. Like meat left too long in fluorescent light. She stepped down slowly. "If you smell it," she whispered to herself, "it's already inside you." The phrase had come uninvited. It felt like something the building wanted her to understand. The nightmares begin. The next morning, the tenants were quieter than usual. In the lobby, a man from the 5th floor, thin, sleep-deprived mid-30s, argued with Mr. Caldera. "It's in the vents," the man insisted. "The smell and the noise." "There is no noise," Caldera snapped. "You're stressed." "I'm not stressed," the man said, though his hands trembled. "I keep dreaming about hooks." Mara's chest tightened. "Hooks?" she asked gently. The man looked at her like someone drowning looks at another swimmer. "Meet hooks," he whispered, "hanging from the ceiling and something walking between them." The lobby went silent. Caldera forced a dry laugh. Urban imagination spreads faster than mold. But the man wasn't laughing. "It breathes through the vents," he said. "You can hear it if you wake up at 2:17. The time dropped into the room like a stone into water. Ripples of recognition spread through the small crowd. Several tenants looked away. They had heard it too. They just hadn't said it. Mara felt it then. The shift. This wasn't isolated to her anymore. The building was synchronizing. The scraping in the ducts. That night, she placed a glass against the wall near the vent. Old trick. Amplify the sound. At 2:16 a.m. the air thickened. At 2:17 a.m. the hum returned. But this time, it wasn't just in the walls. It moved overhead. through the ventilation system. A slow, dragging scrape echoed faintly inside the ductwork. Not random, not loose metal. Intentional. Measured. The glass vibrated in her hand. The scrape paused, then resumed, moving toward her vent. Her pulse raced. She held her breath. The sound grew louder, closer, until it stopped directly above her kitchen. The vent rattled faintly. Something heavy shifted in the duct. A low exhale filtered through the slats. Warm, moist. The metallic scent intensified so sharply it stung her eyes. "If you smell it," she whispered, voice shaking, "it's already inside you." The vent screws began to tremble. Not violently, subtly. One quarter turn. Another. The scrape resumed, slow, deliberate, like something adjusting its position above her. The vent cover bowed slightly inward. Her throat tightened. And then, a single drop of liquid slipped through the slats. It landed on the kitchen tile with a soft, wet sound. Dark. Thick. She didn't need to touch it. She knew. The vent stopped moving. The scrape traveled onward. Upward. Toward apartment 9. The pattern reveals itself. Mara grabbed her phone and ran into the hallway. The metallic scent was stronger there. She could feel airflow now, a faint current pulling upward through the corridor, as if the building were inhaling. Doors along the hallway bore faint dampness near their vents. Sweat. The building was sweating. Or bleeding. From inside out. Across the hall, apartment 9 stood silent. The brass number gleamed dully in the flickering light. And beneath the door, a thin ribbon of dark moisture seeped outward. Not dripping. Flowing. As if drawn by gravity toward her feet. She crouched slowly. The liquid did not spread randomly. It curved, turning slightly toward the wall, toward the shared vent system, as if following a path already carved inside the building's structure. "It circulates," she whispered. The realization chilled her more than the smell. It wasn't confined to a room. It moved. Through walls, through ducts, through floors. "He doesn't knock. He circulates." The phrase formed clearly in her mind. The disappearance on 5. A scream shattered the silence. From below. Floor 5. Mara ran toward the stairwell, heart pounding. Other doors opened cautiously along the hall. Fear had replaced denial. By the time she reached the 5th floor, the metallic scent was overwhelming. The man who'd complained that morning, the one who dreamed of hooks, stood in the hallway outside his apartment. Or rather, he stood halfway inside it. His front door hung open. His body was rigid. His eyes wide. He wasn't screaming anymore. He couldn't. His feet remained planted in the hallway. But the rest of him, from the waist up, was gone. Inside his apartment. Not pulled violently. Not torn. Simply removed. Like something had drawn him inward without disturbing his lower body. The metallic scent flooded the corridor. The air from his apartment vent roared faintly, like wind moving through a tunnel. Tenants screamed. Someone called the police. But Mara didn't look at them. She looked at the vent above his door. It rattled faintly, then went still. And from inside the apartment, a slow, wet dragging sound echoed. Moving upward. The understanding. Back on the 8th floor, Mara leaned against her door, shaking. It wasn't random. It wasn't chaotic. The building selected. It circulated. It fed vertically. Every disappearance coincided with the movement inside the walls. From lower floors, upward, toward 9. Apartment 9 was the origin. It was the collection point, the place where circulation ended, and something waited there to receive it. At 2:23 a.m., the hallway fell silent again. The metallic scent faded slightly, as if digestion had begun. Across from her, the brass number 9 gleamed softly, satisfied, and inside the ductwork, far above, something shifted its weight, preparing to move again tomorrow night. At 2:17. Chapter 7. The butcher was never caught. By the 7th night, the building no longer pretended to be innocent. Neither did the tenants. After the incident on floor 5, the police returned. Flashing lights painted the lobby in frantic red and blue. Officers questioned everyone. Maintenance staff dismantled sections of ductwork in 5C. They found nothing. No blood pooling beneath the vent. No torn fabric inside the ducts. No sign of forced entry. The upper half of the man's body was simply gone. Official explanation: structural collapse inside the unit, panic-induced confusion, ongoing investigation. Unofficial truth: no one slept. Mara stood at her window long after the sirens faded. Outside, the alley remained indifferent. The city moved on. Cars passed. Neon signs flickered. Inside Calder Street high-rise, the air felt heavier, as if something had grown stronger. The story of Adrian Vassell. The next afternoon, Mara found the lavender cardigan woman seated alone in the dim lobby. "You knew him," Mara said quietly. The woman didn't ask who. "Everyone knew of him," she replied. "Adrian Vassell." The name lingered between them. The woman's fingers tightened around her purse. "He worked at a slaughterhouse outside the city," she said. "Night shifts. Came home before dawn, always carried black trash bags." "Full of what?" "He said scraps, a thin smile, for disposal." Mara leaned closer. "Did you believe him?" The woman's eyes drifted toward the ceiling. "He never used the elevator." "I know. He said he preferred the stairs." "Between 8 and 10, Mara asked. The woman looked at her sharply. "You've counted." "Yes." Silence. Finally the woman whispered, "He wasn't caught." Mara felt her pulse slow, steady. "I know." "No," the woman said, voice trembling faintly. "You don't understand. He wasn't caught because he wasn't there." A pause. The police searched apartment 9 twice, tore up the floors, smashed open the walls. And they found nothing. "Because he cleaned." The woman shook her head slowly. "No, because the apartment was empty." "Vacant." "Not empty." The difference mattered. The unsolved pattern. Mara spent the evening reviewing old news archives online. 3 years ago, several tenants had vanished within a 6-month span. Different floors. Different backgrounds. No witnesses. Every disappearance occurred between 2:15 and 2:20 a.m. Every investigation led to apartment 9. Every search found nothing. No blood. No tools. No refrigeration units. No evidence of slaughter. And yet the rumors persisted. They called him the butcher. Because what else do you call someone who works with meat and lives where bodies disappear? But there had never been proof of murder. Only absence. Mara's eyes narrowed. What if he wasn't killing them, she whispered. What if he was delivering them? The thought slid into place too easily. The electricity spikes. The movement between floors. The ventilation circulation. Adrian Vassell hadn't been caught. Because he had never been the predator. He had been an employee. The dream. That night, sleep claimed her against her will. Not deep, not restful. She stood in a long, tiled corridor under flickering fluorescent lights. Hooks hung from the ceiling in neat rows. Metallic clean, waiting. The air was thick with iron. She walked forward slowly. At the end of the corridor stood a door marked 9. The brass number gleamed brighter than the others. A man stood beneath it. Tall, broad-shouldered. His face was indistinct. Blurry, like a corrupted frame of video. "Adrian?" she asked. He didn't respond. Instead, he lifted something heavy from the floor. A body, not struggling, not resisting, carried easily over his shoulder. He walked toward the door marked 9. As he passed her, she saw his hands. Clean. No blood. Just calloused palms. He wasn't violent. He was methodical. The door opened. Darkness inside. Not a room. A vertical shaft. Breathing. He stepped into it. The door closed. The hum began. Mara jolted awake at 2:17 a.m. The hum was real. The dream wasn't finished. The truth in the walls. She rushed into the hallway. The metallic scent was overwhelming tonight. Heavier than ever before. Apartment 9's door stood slightly ajar. Just an inch. Her breath caught. No one goes in. No one comes out. Except tonight. It was open. She approached slowly. The hallway lights flickered violently. The hum resonated through the floor beneath her feet. Inside the crack of the door. Darkness. But not empty darkness. Depth. Movement. She pushed the door gently. It swung open without resistance. The apartment beyond was not small. Not empty. It was tiled floor to ceiling in white ceramic. Industrial drains lined the ground. Hooks hung from rails overhead. Hundreds of them. Swaying faintly. There were no windows. No furniture. Just space. And at the far end, a vertical opening in the floor. A shaft descending into darkness. Warm air rose from it. Breathing. The hum emanated from below. She stepped inside. The door closed softly behind her. Her heart thundered. "This isn't real," she whispered. But the tile beneath her feet was cold. Solid. From below, a faint shape ascended. Slowly. Not climbing. Being lifted. As if carried by unseen machinery. Her breath hitched. The shape rose into the light. Adrian Vassal. Or what remained of him. His body was intact. But his eyes. Empty. Glossy. Like glass. He stood upright without effort. Supported by nothing. His mouth opened slowly. Not to speak. To breathe. The same slow, deliberate inhale she'd heard through the walls. He wasn't alive. He wasn't dead. He was functioning. Her stomach twisted. He turned toward her. His head tilted slightly to one side. As if assessing. Behind him, deeper in the shaft, something larger shifted. A silhouette too tall to be human. Too narrow. Too elongated. It did not climb. It circulated upward. The hum intensified. Adrian stepped forward once. Mechanical. Controlled. Her pulse roared in her ears. "You weren't caught," she whispered. His lips parted slightly. A whisper escaped. "Vacant." The lights flickered violently. The hooks overhead clanged in unison. And from behind him, the larger shape moved closer. Mara took a slow step backward. The door behind her was no longer visible. The walls seemed farther apart, the room deeper than before. Apartment 9 was not a residence. It was a throat, and something below was swallowing upward. At exactly 2:17 a.m. Chapter 8. Someone is living between the walls. When the lights stabilized, Mara was no longer inside the tiled room. She was standing in the hallway outside apartment 9. Alone. The door was closed. The brass number gleamed as it always had, polished, indifferent. Her breathing came in sharp bursts. Her palms were cold. For a disorienting second, she questioned everything. Had she blacked out? Had she ever entered? She looked down at her hands. Fine dust clung to her fingertips. White, ceramic dust. And beneath it, a faint smear of something darker. Warm. Real. The hum had stopped, but the metallic scent remained thick in the air. The building had exhaled again. And now it was quiet. Too quiet. The crawlspace. By morning, she understood something crucial. Apartment 9 was not a fixed space. It appeared. It swallowed. It reset. But the movement, the circulation, was constant. And circulation requires passageways. The stairwell between 8 and 10 had felt hollow. The vents carried warmth upward. The walls vibrated with vertical motion. There had to be access. That afternoon, while police tape still fluttered weakly on the 5th floor, Mara slipped into the maintenance corridor near the trash chute. It was narrow, unlit, smelled of mildew and old insulation. She found it by following the airflow, standing still long enough to feel the draft against her ankles. The draft was subtle, but persistent. It slipped through a narrow crack behind the trash compactor panel. She pried it open. Behind it, a dark vertical shaft. Not plumbing, not wiring. A crawlspace, barely wide enough for a person. Her heart thudded. He doesn't knock. He circulates. She turned on her phone flashlight and stepped inside. The air was warmer here. And the smell, overpowering. Iron, sweet decay. The walls of the shaft weren't concrete. They were lined in wood. Old, scored with vertical scratches. Long grooves etched into the grain, as if something heavy had been dragged upward repeatedly. She moved slowly, pressing her back against one side, feet against the other. Climbing. The space vibrated faintly beneath her, like the inside of a throat. Halfway between floors, she paused. There, in the beam of her flashlight, bones, stripped clean, stacked carefully on a narrow ledge inside the wall. Not scattered. Arranged. Methodical. A ribcage leaned upright against the wood. Small bones placed in rows beside it. Not chaos. Inventory. Her stomach twisted. This was not feeding. This was storage. Something in the building wasn't devouring everything. It was keeping parts. Her light flickered. The hum began. Low. Deep. Directly below her. Her pulse spiked. It was moving again. Upward. She climbed faster. Her hand slipped once on something slick. Warm. She didn't look down. She didn't need to. Between floors, the crawl space widened slightly near the midpoint between 8 and 10. A hidden landing. A platform carved inside the wall cavity. There was no painted number here. No marking. Just space. And something standing within it. Her flashlight beam trembled. A figure faced the wooden wall opposite her. Tall. Too tall for the space. Its back was to her. its shoulders narrow and elongated, arms hanging loosely at its sides, not quite touching the ground. The air around it shimmered faintly, as if heat rose from its skin, or from whatever surface passed for skin. It wasn't Adrian. This was larger, thinner, structural. The hum radiated from it. Her breath became shallow. The metallic scent burned her throat. The figure didn't turn, but it knew she was there. She felt it. A subtle shift in posture. A pause in the hum. "If you smell it," she whispered hoarsely, "it's already inside you." The figure's shoulders twitched. Slowly, it began to move. Not toward her. Upward. It pressed itself against the wood and merged. The wall absorbed it. The wood flexed like muscle around bone. The figure slid vertically inside the structure, disappearing into the space above. The hum intensified, moving toward apartment 9. Mara's flashlight flickered violently. She scrambled upward, toward the 8th floor opening, toward air, toward something familiar. Behind her, the wood rippled faintly, like a pulse traveling through tissue. The hallway again. She stumbled out of the crawlspace panel onto the 8th floor maintenance corridor. Her chest heaved. The metallic scent filled the hallway fully now. Tenants' doors stood ajar. People watched from inside their apartments. No one spoke. They could feel it too. The circulation. The building was awake. Across from her, apartment 9's brass number gleamed brighter than she had ever seen it. The door creaked open slowly. No one stood there. But inside, the tiled room waited. Hooks swaying gently, warm air rising. And in the center of the floor, the vertical shaft yawned open. Breathing. The hum crescendoed. From below, something ascended again. Not Adrian. Not yet. Something larger. The hooks trembled. Tenants began retreating into their apartments. Doors slammed shut. Locks clicked. The building had selected again. Mara's pulse thundered. She understood now. The butcher had not hunted. He had maintained. He had guided. He had fed the circulation. And when he was no longer sufficient, the building adapted. Between floors, between walls, something was living inside the structure itself. And it was growing. The shape in the shaft rose closer to the tiled floor. Long limbs unfolding, head nearly brushing the ceiling. The brass number on the door began to darken. Not tarnish. Deepen. As if absorbing light. Mara stepped backward slowly. The air pressure shifted. The hum reached a pitch that made her teeth ache. And then, every vent in the hallway exhaled at once. Warm, wet, metallic, as if the entire building had taken a single, synchronized breath. At 2:17 a.m. Chapter 9. Apartment 9 is bigger on the inside. By the 9th night, no one pretended anymore. Half the tenants had left. The other half stayed because they had nowhere else to go, or because something in the building made leaving feel complicated. Mara had tried. That morning she packed a suitcase, folded her clothes, zipped it shut, walked to the elevator. Pressed lobby. The doors closed. The car descended smoothly. 8, 7, 6. At 5 the lights flickered. At 4 the hum began. At 3 the metallic scent filled the small space so completely she could taste it on her tongue. 2. The elevator stopped. The panel went blank. No floor indicator. No movement. The hum deepened. She pressed the emergency button. Nothing. Then softly, the elevator began rising again. Not descending. Rising. 3, 4, 5. The numbers flickered past too quickly. 8. Then 9. Her breath stopped. There was no 9 button. There was no 9 floor. But the panel glowed. 9. The doors slid open. She stood frozen. The hallway beyond was unfamiliar. Longer. Wider. The walls tiled in white ceramic. Industrial drains lining the floor. Hooks hanging from rails overhead. Hundreds. Swaying gently. The elevator doors remained open behind her. Waiting. "You don't leave," she whispered. The doors closed. She was alone. The corridor that shouldn't exist. The tiled corridor stretched far beyond the building's known dimensions. Calder Street high-rise was narrow from the outside. This hallway was expansive. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered at uneven intervals, casting shifting shadows between rows of hooks. Each hook was polished, clean, used. The metallic scent was overwhelming here, but not chaotic. Organized, like a facility designed for processing. She stepped forward slowly. Her footsteps echoed, but the echo didn't match the size of the corridor. It sounded deeper, as if space extended further than she could see. The hallway ended at a door, marked only with a brass number. 9. The same number from her floor. She approached cautiously. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the polished metal. But it wasn't perfectly synchronized. Her reflection blinked half a second after she did. Her stomach tightened. She reached for the handle. It turned easily. The door opened. The impossible room. Inside, the apartment she had glimpsed before. Tiled. Hooks. Drains. The vertical shaft in the center of the floor. But now she could see its depth. It descended far below the building's foundation. Too far. The shaft walls were not concrete. They were lined with wood, scored with scratches, veined like muscle. The hum resonated from within it. Slow, rhythmic, breathing. Apartment 9 wasn't a room. It was a lung. She stepped closer to the shaft's edge. Warm air rose from below. Metallic. Sweet. Her vision blurred slightly at the edges. The hooks overhead began to sway more noticeably. Clink. 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 In unison. From deep inside the shaft. Movement. Something rising. She didn't retreat this time. She leaned forward. Watched. The shape ascended slowly. Long limbs unfolding. Shoulders scraping faintly against the shaft's sides. When it reached the tiled floor, it did not step out. It unfolded outward, as if the room expanded to accommodate it. Its body was elongated, too thin, skin pale and stretched tight over angles that didn't align with human anatomy. Its head tilted slightly to one side, and its face was wrong, not because it lacked features, because it had too many. Layered, subtle impressions of other faces pressed faintly beneath the surface, as if memories had been absorbed into it. Her pulse thundered. "You're not the butcher," she whispered. The thing's mouth opened slowly. Its jaw unhinged farther than natural. And behind it, another mouth. And behind that, another, layered inward. A vertical throat. The hum intensified. Apartment 9 was expanding. The walls drifted farther apart. The ceiling lifted higher. The room was no longer bound by architecture. It was bound by hunger. The camera proof. Somewhere far away, down in the lobby, security footage recorded nothing unusual. The elevator never stopped at 9. The hallway outside 8B remained empty. Mara never entered apartment 9. According to the cameras, she stood motionless in the 8th floor hallway at 2:17 a.m. Eyes open, unblinking, for exactly 63 seconds. Then she blinked and stepped back into her apartment. The footage showed no tiled corridor, no hooks, no shaft, no creature unfolding into impossible height. Only a quiet hallway. Vacant, not empty. Inside the lung, the creature stepped fully onto the tiled floor. It stood taller than the ceiling should have allowed. The hooks bent around its shoulders. It inhaled deeply. The sound echoed through the shaft and out into the unseen floors above and below. Circulation. Mara felt it then. A pull. Not physical. Internal. As if something inside her chest responded to its breath. Her lungs tightened painfully. Her vision darkened at the edges. "If you smell it," she whispered weakly, "it's already inside you." The creature's layered faces shifted subtly. Recognition. It took one long step toward her. The tiled floor rippled faintly beneath its weight. She stepped backward, but the door behind her was gone. Only tile. Only hooks. Only the shaft. The building was not a structure. It was an organism. Apartment 9 was not a room. It was the heart, and she was standing inside its chamber. The creature tilted its head again, and in a voice that sounded like multiple breaths layered together, it spoke. Vacant does not mean empty. The hum reached a pitch that rattled her bones. The hooks overhead clanged violently. The shaft pulsed, and for the first time, Mara understood the final truth. The building did not choose randomly. It chose those who noticed, those who counted the steps, those who followed the circulation, those who saw the erased number. It did not want ignorance. It wanted awareness, because awareness tasted stronger. The creature stepped closer, close enough now that she could see faint impressions beneath its skin. Eyes, hands, faces, pressed into its structure. Stored, not consumed. Integrated. The room expanded again. Wider, deeper, hungrier, and from far above, in the hallway of the 8th floor, the brass number 9 darkened slowly, as if absorbing something new. At exactly 2:17 a.m. Chapter 10. The building chooses the next tenant. The moment the creature touched her, the hum stopped. Not gradually, not fading. It ceased like a power grid cut clean through. The tiled room vanished. The hooks disappeared. The shaft collapsed inward like a closing throat. And Mara was standing once again in the hallway of the 8th floor. Apartment 9's door was closed. The brass number gleamed. The fluorescent light buzzed weakly overhead. 2:18 a.m. Silence. She looked down at her hands. Unmarked. No blood. No ceramic dust. No evidence. Her reflection in the elevator mirror across the hall stared back at her. Unsplit. Whole. For a long moment, she allowed herself to breathe. Slowly, carefully. The metallic scent was faint. Almost gone. Maybe it had been building-induced psychosis. Environmental stress. Trauma layered over isolation. Maybe the building was only old. And she was only tired. She stepped backward toward her apartment door, reached for the handle, and froze. Her door number read, not 8B. Her throat tightened. She lived in 8B. She had signed for 8B. Slowly she turned her head. Across the hallway, the brass number had changed. It no longer read 9. It read 8B. Her stomach dropped. The door was hers. The polished metal gleamed brighter than she had ever seen it. Vacant doesn't mean empty. Her pulse thundered. No, she whispered. The hum began again. Low. Internal. This time, inside her chest. The shift. The hallway stretched subtly. Not visibly at first, but perceptibly. The distance between doors widened. The ceiling felt higher. The air warmer. Behind her, the elevator dinged softly. The doors slid open. Empty. Waiting. She didn't move. Across from her, her former apartment door creaked open slowly. Warm air exhaled from within. Metallic. Sweet. The tiled room waited on the other side. Hooks swaying gently. The vertical shaft breathing. But now, there was something new. On the tiled wall beside the shaft, a brass plaque. Polished. Freshly mounted. It read, Mara Ionescu. Her knees weakened. This isn't real, she whispered. But the hum inside her chest deepened. Her lungs expanded painfully. The metallic scent was no longer in the air. It was in her bloodstream. If you smell it, it's already inside you. The creature did not need to drag her. It did not need to circulate her. She had already stepped inside willingly. She had counted the steps. She had followed the vents. She had opened the door. Awareness tasted stronger, and she had fed herself to it. The integration. She felt it then. Not pain. Pressure. Her spine lengthening slightly. Her shoulders narrowing. Her breath synchronizing with the hum. Layered beneath her thoughts, other impressions surfaced. Faces. Memories. Fragments of voices. The man from 5C dreaming of hooks. The quiet tenant from 7C. Adrian Vassal carrying heavy bags up stairwells. Not victims. Not entirely. Components. Stored. Integrated. The building did not devour. It assimilated. The shaft pulsed gently. Waiting. She stepped forward into the tiled room. Not forced. Not dragged. The hooks overhead clanged softly in greeting. The creature stood near the shaft. Tall. Elongated. Layered faces shifting faintly beneath its pale surface. It tilted its head. And for the first time, she understood its posture. It wasn't predatory. It was administrative. The building required maintenance. Circulation required oversight. Someone had to guide the flow. Adrian had once served that function. Now, he stood within the shaft, half integrated. His features barely distinguishable. No longer sufficient. The creature extended a long, narrow hand toward her. She hesitated only a moment, then took it. The hum stabilized. The building exhaled in relief. Her reflection shimmered across the tiled wall and began to change. Her face elongated subtly. Her skin paled. Beneath it, other impressions pressed faintly outward, not consuming her, joining her. The brass plaque gleamed brighter. Mara Ionescu. Caretaker. Circulator. Witness. The next tenant. Morning came quietly to Calder Street high-rise. Police reports were filed. Tenants packed boxes. Moving trucks idled in the alley. By noon, half the remaining residents had left. Apartment 8B was listed as available. Fresh paint. New carpet. Discounted rent. Immediate move-in. The metallic scent was faint now. Almost unnoticeable. Just old pipes. It's always the pipes. 3 days later, a young man stood in the hallway with a single suitcase. He studied the building across the street first, then stepped inside. Cheap rent. No questions asked. Immediate move-in. He signed the lease for 8B. The building manager handed him the keys. Quiet place, the manager said. Good for fresh starts. The elevator carried him to the 8th floor. The doors opened. The hallway lights flickered once. He stepped out. Across from his apartment door stood a brass number. 9. Polished, untouched by age. He frowned slightly. Strange numbering, he muttered. The metallic scent brushed faintly against the back of his throat. He coughed. Probably the pipes. Inside the walls. Between floors. Within the shaft. Mara stood tall beside the circulation, her elongated frame nearly brushing the tiled ceiling. Her layered breath synchronized with the building's pulse. She watched through the wood, through the vents, through the erased number between 8 and 10. The new tenant paused outside his door, listening. At 2:16 a.m. the air thickened. At 2:17 a.m. the hum began. The brass number gleamed. And deep inside the structure, the building chose again.
Closing chapter.
You were never listening to a story about a man with a knife. You were listening to a story about a structure that learned how to hunger. The butcher was never the beginning, he was a symptom, a tool, a circulatory system for something older than the concrete wrapped around it. The building did not trap its tenants, it absorbed them, floor by floor, breath by breath, and the cameras, they didn't fail, they complied. So here is the truth you can't ignore. If a place smells wrong, if the air feels thick, if the walls seem to pulse when you wake at the same time every night, you are not imagining it. Buildings remember. Structures digest. And some doors are not meant to open because they were never designed to let you out. Tonight, when your home settles and the pipes groan, ask yourself one question. Is it just the pipes? Or is something circulating? Sleep carefully.